I live in a small two-bedroom bungalow in Ohio that I've owned for nearly 40 years. My husband, David, passed away 5 years ago, leaving me with a quiet life, a modest pension from my years as a nurse, and our daughter, Jessica. For the last few years, it's just been me, my cat, and a garden that needs more attention than I sometimes have the energy for. My life was simple, predictable, and calm. That is, until the day my daughter won the lottery and decided my simple life wasn't good enough for her new one. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. It started on a Tuesday. I was pulling weeds from my tomato patch when Jessica's car, a slightly beat-up sedan she'd had since college, screeched into my driveway. She burst out of the car, waving a small slip of paper in her hand like a winning flag. Mom, you are not going to believe this," she screamed, her voice several pitches higher than usual. I stood up, wiping dirt from my hands onto my apron. "Jess, what is it? Did something happen?" My mind immediately went to the worst-case scenarios: a car accident, losing her job. She ran to me, her face flushed and eyes wide with a manic energy. "I won! I won!" "Won what, honey? A free pizza?" I chuckled, trying to calm her down. "No, the Powerball, the big one, Mom, $33 million after taxes." The number felt so impossibly large that my brain couldn't quite process it. 33 million? It sounded like a number from a movie, not something that could happen to my daughter, who just last week was complaining about her student loan payments. I took the ticket from her trembling hands and looked at the numbers. I'd seen the winning numbers on the news that morning. They matched. Every single one. A slow smile spread across my face. "Oh, honey," I breathed, pulling her into a tight hug. "That's wonderful. That's unbelievable." The next few days were a blur of financial advisors, lawyers, and media requests, all of which Jessica handled with a surprising amount of savvy, guided by her new boyfriend, Ben. Ben was a smooth talker who entered Jessica's life about 6 months prior. He called himself an entrepreneur, but from what I could tell, his main business was managing Jessica's social life. He was handsome, charming, and I didn't trust him one bit. "We need to be smart about this, babe," he'd say, one arm permanently slung around Jessica's shoulders. "This is generational wealth. We have to protect it." I was just happy for Jessica. All her worries, the debt, the crummy apartment, and the job she hated as a social media manager were gone. She could finally have the life she deserved, and I, in my quiet way, was excited for her. Maybe she could finally get the reliable car she always wanted, or put a down payment on a small house of her own. Her plans, however, were much grander. "We're buying a house, Mom," she announced, a week later, showing me a listing on her brand new tablet. It wasn't a house, it was a mansion, a sprawling 10,000 square foot monstrosity with a pool, a home theater, and a 6-car garage. It was located in the wealthiest suburb of the city, a place we used to drive through as a child, gawking at the gates and manicured lawns. "Jess, this is a lot of house for 2 people," I said gently. Ben, who was lounging on my couch as if he owned it, smirked. "It's an investment, Sarah. You have to think like the rich now. Besides, it's not for 2 people." Jessica beamed, taking his hand. "He's right, it's for 3. You're moving in with us, Mom. You can have the whole guest wing to yourself. No more worrying about this old house, no more mowing the lawn. You've taken care of me your whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you." Tears welled in my eyes. The thought of leaving my home, the home I'd shared with David, was painful. But the thought of being a burden to my daughter was worse. Her offer was so generous, so full of love, that I couldn't refuse. It felt like the happy ending we both deserved. The transition was a whirlwind. Ben hired a team of people to pack up my entire life. They were efficient, impersonal, and wrapped my memories in bubble wrap with a detached professionalism. Jessica was too busy with designers and architects to help, flitting from one meeting to the next, picking out marble countertops and Italian furniture. "Just pack the essentials, Mom," she'd say over the phone, her voice distracted. "We're buying all new stuff for the mansion. It has to have a cohesive aesthetic, you know?"
So I packed my photo albums, David's old watch, and a box of my most treasured books. The rest, the furniture David and I picked out, the curtains I'd sewn, the chipped mugs in my cupboard, was sold off in an estate sale that Ben arranged. Clears up capital for the move, he'd explained with a pat on my shoulder. The day I moved into the mansion, I felt like a visitor in a luxury hotel. The guest wing was larger than my entire bungalow, with a sterile, modern design that felt cold and unwelcoming. My small box of personal belongings looked pathetic in the cavernous walk-in closet. Jessica's attitude began to change almost immediately. The sweet, considerate daughter I knew was replaced by a stressed, irritable stranger who spoke in a clipped tone. My presence, which was supposed to be a comfort, seemed to become an annoyance. "Mom, can you please not put your teacup directly on the marble? It might stain." She'd snap if I forgot a coaster. "Mom, those are my guest towels. Yours are in the gray cabinet." "Mom, Ben and I are having important people over tonight. Maybe you could have dinner in your wing." I tried to be helpful. I'd cook the simple, hearty meals she used to love, but they would go untouched in favor of catered sushi or expensive takeout. I'd try to clean, but a uniformed cleaning crew came twice a week, wiping away any trace of my efforts. I felt useless, a ghost haunting the hallways of my daughter's new life. Ben was the one who drove the wedge deeper. He'd make snide remarks just loud enough for me to hear, or he'd openly mock my simple clothes in front of Jessica's new wealthy friends. "Sarah's style is what you'd call early retirement chic," he'd say with a laugh, and Jessica would force a tight-lipped smile. The final brutal blow came just 2 weeks after I'd moved in. I came into the kitchen one morning to find Jessica and Ben talking in hushed, urgent tones. They stopped the moment they saw me. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound cheerful as I reached for a mug. Jessica wouldn't meet my eyes. She cleared her throat. "Mom, we need to talk." Ben stood beside her, a smug look on his face. He placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of feigned support. "Ben and I have been talking," she began, her voice stiff, "and we've decided that this arrangement, it's just not working." My heart froze in my chest. "What arrangement? What are you talking about?" "Having you here," she said, the words coming out in a cold rush. "It's just a lot of pressure. We're starting our new life, and we need our space. This house, our life, it's for a young couple. It's for us." The air left my lungs. "You invited me here, Jessica. You told me you wanted to take care of me." "And we will," she said quickly, as if that solved everything. "We'll find you a wonderful place, a retirement community. You'll have friends your own age, activities." "I have a home," I whispered, the words catching in my throat. "You made me sell it." Ben stepped forward. "Let's be realistic, Sarah. That little house was falling apart. We did you a favor. Now Jessica has been more than generous, but it's time to be an adult. We'll give you enough to secure a nice apartment for a year. After that, you're on your own." Tears were streaming down my face now. A year? What happens after a year? Jessica finally looked at me, and her eyes were cold, empty of the love I had known my whole life. "You're a resourceful woman, Mom. You'll figure it out." 3 days after she received a check for $33 million, my daughter, my only child, had a security guard escort me to the door. I was allowed one suitcase. As I stood on the pristine marble steps, watching the massive oak door close in my face, the reality hit me. I was 62 years old, homeless, and my daughter had just thrown me away like a piece of old furniture that no longer matched her aesthetic.
Finding a lawyer willing to take on a case against a multi-millionaire on a contingency basis was not easy. Most of the high-powered attorneys we called gave us a polite but firm no. We were a lost cause, an elderly woman with no resources fighting a young woman with endless funds. But Carol was persistent. She spent days calling legal aid societies and scouring online forums for recommendations. Finally, she found a name. Mr. Davison, a semi-retired lawyer who specialized in elder law and contract disputes. He had a reputation for being a bulldog who loved taking on cases that other lawyers deemed unwinnable. His office was small and cluttered, tucked away in an older part of the city. Mr. Davison himself was a short, stout man with a rumpled suit and a surprisingly kind smile.
He listened patiently as I recounted the entire story. From the moment Jessica showed me the lottery ticket to the moment the security guard closed the door. Carol sat beside me, occasionally adding a detail I'd forgotten. When I finished, Mr. Davison leaned back in his creaky chair and steepled his fingers. "She made you sell your house with the verbal promise of lifetime residency in her new home?" "Yes," I confirmed. "And this boyfriend of hers, Ben, he facilitated all the paperwork for the sale of your property?" "Yes. He said it was to clear up capital." Mr. Davison let out a low whistle. "That's a classic move. They isolate the asset, convert it to cash, and then cut you loose. It's predatory. The problem, Mrs. Miller, is that a verbal contract is notoriously difficult to prove in court." My heart sank. "So there's nothing I can do?" "I didn't say that," he said, a glint in his eye. "You said you signed a lot of papers. Did Ben, by any chance, give you copies of what you signed?" I shook my head. "He took care of everything. He said he'd keep them in a safe place." "Of course he did," Mr. Davison grumbled. "Okay, that's our first step. We need to get our hands on that paperwork. The estate sale company is legally required to have a record of their contract with you." He spent the next hour making phone calls. His demeanor changed from a kindly old lawyer to a tenacious investigator. He was firm, authoritative, and didn't take no for an answer. Within a few hours, a courier delivered a thick manila envelope to his office. Mr. Davison spread the documents across his desk. Most of them were standard contracts for the sale of my home's contents. But then he found something else. A separate document tucked into the back of the pile. "Well, hello there," he murmured, sliding a pair of reading glasses onto his nose. "What have we got here?" He read the document silently, his eyebrows slowly climbing up his forehead. After a few minutes, he looked up at me, a slow, wolfish grin spreading across his face. "Mrs. Miller," he said, tapping a finger on a specific paragraph, "it seems your daughter's boyfriend isn't as smart as he thinks he is. In his haste to get his hands on your assets, he got sloppy." He turned the document around for me to see. It was titled, "Family Financial Agreement." I had no memory of signing it. My signature was there, at the bottom, a shaky, unfamiliar version of my own handwriting. "What is it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "It's a document Ben drafted himself, likely using some template he found online. It's an attempt to legitimize the transfer of the proceeds from your estate sale directly into an account Jessica controlled. He probably thought it would protect them from any future claims you might make on the money. He put in a lot of legal-sounding nonsense about you gifting the money to your daughter out of love and affection. But then he added this." He read the clause aloud. "In consideration for this financial gift, which facilitates the sale of Sarah Miller's primary residence, Jessica Miller agrees to provide Sarah Miller with suitable accommodation and living expenses for the remainder of her natural life, in a manner befitting her status as mother of the primary benefactor." I stared at him, my mind struggling to catch up. "What does that mean?" "It means," Mr. Davison said, his grin widening, "that Ben, in his arrogant attempt to cover his tracks, accidentally put the verbal promise in writing. He created a legally binding contract. He didn't just promise you a place to live, he wrote a clause that obligates your daughter to provide you with housing and financial support for the rest of your life. And not just any housing. Housing that is befitting her mother's status, the mother of a multi-millionaire. By kicking you out, Jessica is in breach of a contract that her own boyfriend wrote." For the first time in weeks, a flicker of hope ignited within me. It wasn't just hope. It was a fierce, burning sense of justice. They had tried to cheat me, to throw me away, and in their greed, they had given me the very weapon I needed to fight back. Chapter 6. The Downfall. Armed with the contract, Mr. Davison drafted a letter that was a masterpiece of legal threat. It was delivered via courier to the mansion, addressed directly to Jessica. The letter outlined her breach of the family financial agreement, detailed her legal obligation to provide for me for life, and gave her a deadline of 48 hours to reinstate my residency in the mansion and provide a substantial monthly stipend for my living expenses, or face a lawsuit that would not only be costly, but also highly public. We're not suing yet, we're just showing our teeth. Let's see how they react when they realize their clever little plan has a fatal flaw. We didn't have to wait long. My old phone, which I had kept in a drawer at Carol's, started ringing less than an hour after the letter was delivered. It was Jessica. Her number was no longer blocked. I let it ring, my hand hovering over the device. My heart pounded in my chest. "Let her sweat," Carol said, placing a calming hand on my arm. "Let Mr. Davison handle it." I let it go to voicemail. The message she left was frantic, a stark contrast to the cold, dismissive woman who had kicked me out. Mom, please pick up. We need to talk. Your lawyer sent us this insane letter. There's been a huge misunderstanding. Please call me back." She called 5 more times that day. Ben also tried calling from his number, which I promptly ignored. The next morning, Mr. Davison received a call from a lawyer representing Jessica. The tone was no longer arrogant, it was conciliatory, bordering on desperate. They wanted to open a dialogue and find an amicable solution. An amicable solution means they're scared, Mr. Davison told me over the phone. They know we have them. Now we press our advantage. Mr. Davison's counteroffer was brutal. He didn't just ask for a place to live. He demanded that the title of a fully furnished 2-bedroom condominium in a high-end downtown building be transferred to my name, free and clear. He also demanded a lifelong, inflation-adjusted annual stipend of $100,000 to be paid out of a trust fund that Jessica would have to establish in my name. Her lawyer balked. The sum was exorbitant, he argued. Jessica's financial advisors were strongly against it. "Fine," Mr. Davison replied calmly. "Then we'll see you in court. I've already drafted the press release. Lottery winner daughter throws elderly mother onto the street. I imagine the local news would have a field day with that. Think of the damage to your client's reputation. A jury will be very sympathetic to a 62-year-old retired nurse who was cheated out of her home by her greedy daughter." The threat of public humiliation was the final nail in their coffin. For Jessica and Ben, their new life was all about image, about flaunting their wealth and status among the city's elite. A scandal like this would make them pariahs. They folded completely. While the lawyers were finalizing the settlement, news started to trickle back to me through a mutual family friend. Jessica and Ben were not living the dream they had projected. Their spending was out of control. Ben had invested a huge chunk of the winnings, nearly $10 million, in a series of high-risk opportunities that had all collapsed, resulting in a total loss. They were burning through the remaining money at an alarming rate, throwing lavish parties, buying exotic cars, and trying desperately to keep up with their new ultra-rich friends who had generations of wealth and knew how to manage it. The lawsuit was a blow they couldn't afford, not just financially, but to their fragile social standing. The pressure caused a massive rift between them. Jessica blamed Bell for his terrible investments and for the sloppy contract that had landed them in this mess. Ben blamed Jessica for being weak and wanting to give in to my demands. The fairy tale romance, built on a foundation of sudden cash, was crumbling just as quickly as the money was disappearing. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. A week after they agreed to the settlement, I received a call. It was Jessica again. This time, her voice was different. The panic was gone, replaced by a hollow, broken tone. "Mom," she said, her voice small, "can we meet? Please? Just you and me, not the lawyers. I need to see you." Against Carol's and Mr. Davison's advice, I agreed. I needed to look my daughter in the eye one last time. I needed to understand how the sweet girl I'd raised could have turned into such a monster. I chose the location, a small, neutral coffee shop halfway between Carol's apartment and the mansion. She arrived looking like a ghost. The designer clothes hung off her frame, her face was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes. The confident, radiant millionaire was gone. In her place was a lost, terrified young woman.